Good afternoon and good morning to those who are outside of the African continent, or in South Africa to be particular. Welcome to Are We Transforming platform. My name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele and I am the host of this platform. Today we are having the air transport pilot who is going to take us through her journey of being a female pilot in a male-dominated aviation industry. When I saw her profile, one thing stood out for me was the fact that despite the pandemic or the COVID-19 pandemic, she's still a positive person. She speaks about possibilities. And when we were talking about her coming to the platform today, she still see an opportunity for her to go back to flying again. Though she said she enjoyed being on the ground, which is actually something we are used to, she indicated that there is so much that one can look out for when it comes to aviation. So I don't want to introduce her and have a lot of, information being given because this is part of the journey that she's going to take us through. So I will allow her to take us through the presentation, which will be like around 30 to 35 minutes. And then after that, we can pose questions, give inputs, because the idea of this platform is actually to identify areas where we can improve and engage with different stakeholders for them to look at things differently. I was asking a colleague of mine and said, what is it that, the country or provinces in South Africa, for instance, that are having small airports doing to make sure that those who do not have, access to the aviation industry are also getting exposed. So I saw this as an opportunity of us having somebody who will take us through her journey and indicate all the goods and the bads and the challenges that she has been able to overcome. But in the process, we'll be learning and actually identifying areas that we can take through or forward to different stakeholders for them to share with us. And I will also welcome, after the presentation, those who are also in the industry to give inputs if necessary, because it's not like she knows it all. We are all here to learn and to source information from all of you. It's very rare to have pilots and cabin crew in the same room and families of those who are in the industry. I feel so honored to have you, Joanne, and I really appreciate for having accepted this invitation. So I'll hand over to you and we'll listen to your journey, go through it with you and make sure that we learn in the process. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you so much.
You have been taking through the people and welcoming them like a very good captain. So over to you, Captain, and we are in your flight. Thank you.
Well, welcome aboard. Temi, thank you for having me over and being able to share my journey with everyone involved and it's going to be listening to this recording. Thank you to everyone that's signing in and thank you for being here. So I'm going to just share my journey of being a female pilot in this male-dominant aviation industry. And I'm going to cover a few areas. This is the content for the presentation. I'm going to be talking about my background, the career, what's next, why pursue an aviation career at all, what are the jobs involved, the 2 questions you should ask before you even start flying, and what are the 3 flying licenses that you can actually get. I'll tap into a little bit about the uniform and what do the stripes mean, the seating positions are in the cockpit, and then I'll start diving into the history and statistics of women in aviation, because it's important to know where we've come from, where we are and where we're going. And then I'm going to look at the challenges faced by female pilots, the recommendations thereafter, and then just a very quick 1 minute, 18-minute presentation on redressing the balance video. All right, so I come from humble beginnings in a little town called Springs not sure why this is jumping. And I matriculated in Germiston, and recently in the last 6 years, I have moved to Cape Town. And it's a beautiful city, and I've made this my new home. During school, I worked really hard, and I also love sports. So I've got my Springbok colors for 100 and 200 meter sprints, and I was honored to be the head girl of my high school. My initial goal was actually to be studying hotel management. I wanted to go to hotel school, but that all changed when I went on an introduction flight, and that's where I really realized what I actually wanted to do. So what happened is, my brother, he was the one that actually wanted to become the pilot, and I wanted to do hotel management. So he went up for an introduction flight at Wonderboom, which is in Pretoria. And the instructor came to us and said to me, "Why don't you come sit at the back?" And I said, "No, I'm going to go have tea with my mom. My brother, that's what he likes to do. Let him go and enjoy it." He said, "No, come with." And so I went along, and during the flight, he made us swap seats, and he actually gave me the controls of the aircraft, and I was hooked. When I landed, I ran to my mom and I said, "Mommy," I said, "this is what I want to do. I want to fly. This is amazing." And subsequently, my brother actually studied and went to do hotel school, and he's perfect for the industry. And I became the pilot. So we completely and utterly swapped roles. And that's the moment I realized that flying is in my blood, and I really, really enjoyed it. Where did this all start? At 14 years old. I've been flying for quite some time, and it started very early. I was the first female South African to go solo at the age of 16. So I was the youngest girl to go solo. I could fly, but I couldn't drive. So it was always a joke in our family. I started my training, but due to the costs, I had to find another way to become a pilot, and started looking at sponsorship programs. And SAA, South African Airways, has a cadet pilot program at that time. And I applied a matric, and they responded and they said, "Sorry, we're not taking that year." So I was left, and I said to my mom, "What am I going to do?" I got accepted into several universities, but I didn't know what to study. I was like, I just want to fly. And my mom, she's incredible. She's such a support structure for me. And she said, "You know what, just relax. Take this year off and figure it out. After a year, we can always go back to universities. You've got a year gap, and let's just figure it out. Let's try again." And soon after, 2 weeks later, I went to, and I got a job at Swissport International, which is at Johannesburg International Airport, as a ground staff member. I did check-in, boarding, arrivals, I pushed wheelchairs. And during this period, Singapore Airlines headhunted me, and they said, "Please, can you actually look after the check-in staff?" So then they upgraded me, and I worked for them for a while. But during this, I applied again to SAA. And this time my application was accepted, and I was like, yes. But it took 3.5 months of grueling selection process. And eventually they chose 13 out of 6,500 applicants for SAA Group 16. And it was an opportunity of a lifetime. So I was extremely honored. That was in 2004. I officially started my training at an air school called 43 Air School in Port Alfred in the Eastern Cape. And I was there for 18 months learning and getting my licenses. I graduated there with the Best Flying Award. And straight after that, my internship was completed at Airlink. And I was there for about 4.5 years. And during this time, there was a captain shortage, and it's never been done in the history of a cadet pilot program, and they upgraded three of us cadets to become a captain. And it was the first time I had been given a chance to get command and learn what it feels like to be a captain. And it was a great experience. During this time, I wanted to teach people how to fly, and so I got my instructor's rating at Springbok Air Academy at Rand Airport. And straight after that, it wasn't much after in 2010, I got the great call from SAA and said, you've done your training, completed your internship, we are ready to take you, come and fly for your national carrier. And it was a dream come true because I can finally be a flying Springbok. And they gave me the seat to be a first officer on a Boeing 737 on the domestic fleet. But unfortunately, SAA was struck in business rescue and by COVID. And so that has put quite a dampen on the whole aviation industry as a whole. During COVID and this business rescue, I had to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? And what is going to happen to my career and to the industry? So I looked at various options, and I started to study for, oh gosh, this is, sorry about that, guys. I started and I completed my MBA in operations and project management. And soon after that, in August 2021, I got retrenched. And at this stage, it was actually good timing, because at that point, I was 90% complete with my studies. I was almost there, and it is another new phase of my career. I've built up in this amount of time 8,600 flying hours. I've been flying for 23 years, and I realized the other day, I've got 23 years left to retirement. I'm exactly halfway. So it's an amazing next step and transformation in my journey. So a lot of guys saying, what's next for me? Well, I'm going to be graduating soon in December and receiving my MBA. I'm basically 100% complete. I was given the amazing honor by the research committee for my dissertation that I did during this time. And it was the first for South Africa, where I started to investigate the customer service challenges faced by persons with reduced mobility, or PRMs, in South African air travel. And I deduced that I categorize it via the social model of disability under the attitudinal, the physical, and the information and communication categories, and see which one of those were the most prevalent in South Africa. So I figured out the challenges, and then I went on to look at the training and see if we improve specialized training for the staff, would PRMs actually have a better travel experience? And if we have a better travel experience, the final stage would be, would they travel more? And I got the great honor, and they would like me to publish my research and begging me to consider my PhD. So that's what I'm going to do in the future. I'm busy working with the IFALPA. It's the International Federation of Airline Pilots, and I'm part of a female pilots working force group. It's a special task force that's like, we're advocates for women in aviation. So we work on mentorship papers when we try and make a change in the industry and become mentors for people and female pilots in the world. At this stage, I'm at a very pivotal point in my career, this 23-year half mark. So with my MBA, I'm actually at this point looking at either going into the corporate, using my MBA, or going back into the airline. But my utter dream would be to combine the two and fly and get into management and use that and encourage it to people to go forward into my airline career. And at this stage, through this whole transformation, I'm just really enjoying this precious time at home. So why pursue a career in aviation? Well, there's several benefits to coming on board. You get to see the world, and you have so many employee benefits. It's financially rewarding. This industry is always evolving and improving, and it's very adventurous, very mentally stimulating. So if you're looking for something that you want to encourage and get involved in, this is a career for you. And the demand for aviation jobs are ever increasing, especially in the coming years, because people want to travel. They love traveling. All right, so I'm going to share with you the jobs in the airline industry. Now, it takes a whole community to get involved in to get that aircraft airborne, from the manufacturers to the ground staff, to the refuelers, to the tug driver, to the crew, right up until the ATC. Then you guys get guys in management, marketing, the legal department. So there's so many areas that one can get involved in. There's just a few. You can become a drone operator, flight dispatcher, airport planner. And where I come in, I'm going to be discussing the journey of a pilot. So before you start flying, you need to ask yourself 2 questions. What type of flying do you want to do? Because flying is very personal and it's very different for everybody. And it's so what works for me might not work for somebody else. So for me, I love airline flying. Other guys love corporate flying and business charter, government flying. Some guys love to be in the police and law enforcement. There's firefighters. There's our trainers. Some trainers like to train you need trainers for every category here. You get helicopter pilots. Do you want to become a stunt pilot and do air shows? Or do you want to do cargo or surveillance? Do you want to go out in the Kruger National Park? There's so many ways. So you need to ask yourself, what type of flying do you want to do? And then the next question is, which training route are you going to take? So there are 3 options to get trained up. The first option, you can do it privately. So that you can do at a flying school and you pay for it, but unfortunately, this is the most expensive route. The second one is the military or the Air Force. And this takes a little bit longer, but even in that, once you're in the Air Force, you can still decide what type of flying you want to do. Do you want to go and do the cargo flying? Do you want to do the helicopter flying? Do you want to do the fighter jets? So even in that, there's different roles. And then lastly, is what I went for, is the sponsorship or bursary program, where you get pilot training through a structured system and you find a sponsorship that can help you pay for your training. So once you've decided and you've answered these 2 questions, the next thing to look at is, well, what licenses are out there? Well, there's 3 types of flying licenses. And it looks like a lot here, but it's quite basic. And they are majority just separated by hours, the time it takes you, and money. So the 3 licenses are you start off with a private pilot's license. It's called a PPL. And that requires about 45 hours and it takes you 2 months, ranging up to and plus 100,000 Rand. Then if that's all you want to do and you just want to fly around in the country, that's perfect. But if you want to take this further and you want to go further, then you must do a commercial pilot's license called a CPL. And that's where you need 200 hours. It takes about 18 months and costs over about 300,000 Rand, depending on where you go. And now this is the question you have to ask yourself, based on the questions, where do you want to do? What type of flying you want to do? Because this is a point where you're going to decide, do you go further into airline or do you stay with the CPL? Now, the next phase is the airline transport pilot's license, called an ATPL. That you need 1,500 hours. It takes up to 5 years, and it can range up to 800,000 and plus. So these are the 3 licenses. Now, a pilot is generally, it's all about hour building. You get a logbook and you just log every single hour that you have got. And that shows your experience and the different types of aircraft that you fly. And so you get judged, or you get many of your jobs based on how many hours you've got and how much experience you've got. The more hours you've got, the more sought after you become. But with the licenses, it's not like a lawyer or a doctor that gets a degree and that's it. For a license, just like your car license, it expires. Ours expires every year. So so we need to keep it valid or renew it. And we do this in what we call the sweat box, the simulator. And we do this every year. And in airlines, they actually do this either every 3 months or every 6 months. And it is over 2 days, 4-hour sessions each. So you're doing 8 hours over 2 days. And if in SAA, we had to do it every 6 months. So basically, in order to keep your flying license, in order to keep your job, you had to pass these training sessions every 6 months. And you do this right up until retirement. This never, never ends. Your license is always having to stay up to date. So what do we do in this simulator, this sweatbox? Well, we learn about procedures. When you're new to the aircraft, they don't just put you straight onto the aircraft, they put you in the simulator so you can learn all the buttons first, learn the procedures, and learn all the emergencies, how to handle it. And this is where you polish your skills. This is also where we learn how to handle new problems, new things that the aviation industry has never seen before. We practice it over here in a safe environment. All right, now we go on to the uniform. A pilot is got 2 uniforms, varying according to your airline. We had a summer uniform, which is the basic hat for the captains, the white open shirt, and the pants with a tie. If you, in winter time, you wear a jacket. Other airlines want you to wear the full jacket entourage, and it looks perfectly great. We have, as females, not a lot of female pilot uniforms. South African Airways actually set the trend for, you can see Captain Jane Tremboth in the little picture over there, and we're allowed to wear skirts to work, and it just makes it look like more ladylike, but not a lot of airlines enforce this. So what do the stripes mean? I get this question all the time. So we get 4 stages. The first stage is you're a trainee, or we call it a junior or third officer or a boy pilot, and it's 1 stripe. Then you get 2 stripes. I'm going to show you over here. Oh, there's one. Here we go. You get 2 stripes, and that's where you put it on both sides. This is a first or a junior first officer or a co-pilot. And the co-pilot is there if there is no captain on board. The second one is you've got 3 stripes. And this is a senior first officer or a co-pilot. And he is head of command if there is no captain on board. So if anything happens to that captain, for whatever reason, let's say he had a medical condition or anything of that sort, then you as a senior first officer will become the commander. And then last but not least is the 4 stripes, that is the captain. He is the pilot in command. Now, when we get trained up basically on equal levels. So a co-pilot can fly the aircraft just as well as the captain. So when they sign you out on the aircraft, you are basically rated as the pilot in command. It's just there's a ranking system in the world, and you just need to work your way up as a co-pilot to eventually become a captain. And that's just years of experience. Some suggestions with the seating positions to explain who sits where. When you walk into a cockpit, the captain sits on the left-hand seat and your co-pilot sits on the right-hand side. The captain is the pilot in charge of that flight. He is the hierarchy, he is in charge, he takes all the main decisions, and you as a co-pilot, you are helping, you are assisting, and if anything should happen, you are equally capable of taking over and executing that flight. And that's the hierarchy in the cockpit. Oh gosh. All right, so are we transforming as women in aviation? Well, let's look at some history and some statistics, because we need to know where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. Now, this is quite fun. I'm going to go into the history of these ladies called aviatrixes, aka women in aviation. And we're going to start off with a lovely lady called Blanche Scott, the tomboy of the air. Now, this is quite a funny story. Now, Blanche had an instructor that took pity on her, and he wanted to give her flying lessons, but only on the ground. So what he did is he put a wooden block behind the aircraft's throttle pedals to restrict her maneuvers just on the ground. And one day, that wooden block disappeared and got dislodged, and she accidentally got airborne and became the first woman in America to fly, demonstrating that women are more than capable of flight. And she was then later known as the tomboy of the air. A year later, Harriet Quimby, she was the first woman to actually get a pilot's license. And the lovely Bessie Coleman in 1921 was the first Black female pilot in America. Due to some issues and discrimination and political pressure, she moved to France, and she actually did stunt flying, and she went over to Paris. So a lovely story if you ever want to go read up on Bessie Coleman. Next, the famous Amelia Earhart, who was the first to cross the Atlantic. And she's also the first woman to take on the pilot look. And what I mean by that is she started to cut her hair short and wear her leather jacket and actually sleep in it to get it like a worn appearance, because she wanted to prove her abilities and her flying skills. Now we come to the really important lady as well. In 1934, Helen Ritchie was the first airline pilot in commercial airlines. And unfortunately, due to gender discrimination and the male unions not liking this, she was kicked out a year later in 1935. So our journey as women in aviation actually only started during World War II, particularly in 1942. And what happened there was a huge shortage of pilots. And to fill the gap, they allowed women to start flying the planes and giving the men the opportunity to fly combat overseas. And this amazing elite women were called WASP, the Women Air Force Service Pilots. And there were 1,100 of these ladies. But unfortunately, in 1944, there was an increase in male availability and political pressure again, and they were told your services are no longer required. So they stopped flying. And this is now where I want to highlight the last 2 points. Emily Warner in 1973 became the first airline captain. And that is, to just point it out, 39 years, almost 40 years later of underrepresentation. That's very, very late. Fast forward to 2020, 47 years after Emily Warner. So if you count it up, it's a lot of years. We still only make up 5% of airline pilots. So this is this is the history of our walk. And we come to the graph in the middle, and I want to show you how underrepresented we are primarily in technical and leadership positions. There's only 1.5% of airline captains and 5% in general of airline pilots, 2.4% of mechanics, and only 3% of CEOs and COOs. And I've heard and I've got another statistics that percentage is actually deteriorating. It's not even increasing. And we are overrepresented in the lower income, lower profile positions. What is encouraging, though, on the other spectrum to see, are we actually transforming? Well, if you look to the right hand of the screen, the students that are coming in, 13% are women, which is a good number. That means that women are more interested in flying, and that is a great number, that there is growth starting to happen. But if you look far right, there are only 4.4% of women who hold ATP licenses. There's not a lot of us. So we call ourselves the unicorns of the industry. So the growth is very slow. It's about 1%, less than 1% every 10 years. And female pilots are still struggling to make a breakthrough in this industry. I'm going to go and discuss the global statistics per country. This shows you the countries with the highest share of female pilots in the world in 2021. And you can see South Africa is the top 3. So I'm very proud to say we're at 9.8%. South Africa is doing amazing in transformation and development. These ladies are my friends, and it's just an incredible time in our history, in our industry. But there's still work to be done and to correct the female underrepresentation based on the statistics worldwide. And this next one is to show you, this is from the data from ISWAP. Now, this is the International Society of Women Airline Pilots, and they gather and publish data of female pilots in the airlines across countries. Only 38 out of 5,000 airlines actually represent pilots more than 5% of the entire pilot body. And we can see here, South African Express and South African Airways are 2 of that 38 airlines. So that is a good start to the industry. This was in a data in 2018. Next, we've got a crucial look at the pilot demand as an opportunity to, again, fill the gap with more female pilots. According to Statista, there are more than 790,000 new pilots that will be required by the year 2037. There has never been a better time to pursue aviation. So we can do that with continued efforts in education and outreach to expect more female pilots in the cockpit, especially in higher profile aviation roles. I'm going to touch on some of the reasons why this number is so big. As like in Africa, we need 29,000 pilots, and there's a big reason for that. Airlines are expanding. They're modernizing their fleets. They're buying new aircraft. They're upgrading, and they need pilots to do that. COVID-19 struck the industry at its knees, and this forced a lot of early retirements and furloughs. So we have lost a lot of experienced pilots too early. They've left, and we need to fill that gap. The new government policies, the regulations, the terms and conditions, everything, a lot of things are deterring the pilots from coming back. And many experienced pilots are looking at other career options. They're looking to study, open their own businesses, looking at living a simpler lifestyle, and choosing a completely different career path. Lastly, medical conditions. We're all human, and things can happen, and then you lose your flying license, you lose your medical, and then, so there's a lot of reasons why this is going to happen. So I'm going to be going through the challenges faced by female pilots. And here I just want to highlight, there is a lot of challenges in every industry. I'm sure in your jobs, wherever you've gone, there is challenges. And many of these you've probably experienced yourself. But these are the major challenges that most of us are facing. But I'm going to point out just this little introduction. In 2018, ICAO, and now they're the International Civil Aviation Organization globally, and they've created a conference called the Global Aviation Gender Summit. And they are very dedicated at improving this gender imbalance. But they couldn't even calibrate the challenges. And now that is a huge factor to remember, because that means that the challenges are so great. If an organization couldn't even calibrate the challenges, that means that the challenges are quite big. So I'm going to just share some of the challenges that I've experienced, that I've heard the ladies experience from the Female Pilots Task Force. And so I want to just share this. And the first challenge we're going to talk about is the workplace culture, adopting a masculine approach. And now this is exactly what Amelia Earhart did. The ladies, to try and fit in, they try and be part of the boys and look like the boys, act like the boys. And we don't have to change who we are. We can still put makeup on and we can look like a lady. The next one is lack of awareness. Even in this digital age, I have met so many girls and women that said they have never met a female pilot, let alone know that they themselves can actually do this. The next is the terms and conditions of employment. Ours do vary, for example, like maternity leave. This needs to be incorporated into policies and procedures. Next is prejudice, gender bias, and discrimination. The male dominating industry is 93% in aviation. If you can imagine, 5% of airlines. So the majority, there's still a lot of prejudice and biasness. The next one, we're looking at religious and cultural diversity. Now, for some cultures and in religious cultures, they don't allow their women to go work. And if they do allow it, they will only go into lower profile positions. Cultural diversity. We are in an industry that is always involved as different kinds of people. One day you can be flying with a captain from Swaziland. The next day you're flying with someone from Australia. All our passengers, everybody, you're flying across the world. You're meeting so many different people. But unfortunately, this brings a lot of misunderstanding. And so we need to have and be taught about mutual respect and communication barriers. And so this is quite a big challenge for us as women in the airline industry. The next one is family responsibilities and expectations. Oh, sorry, man. I don't know why this is going. Sorry, guys. Oh, my apologies. Having little technical issues. The next one's family responsibilities for women. They do differ. We are much more stable. We want flexible working hours and stable environments. And the next one that we're looking at is the underrepresentation. Just like the statistics confirmed, we really need to get that number, that 5% or much higher. So with these challenges, we can look at the recommendations. There's always hope. It might be slow, but there will be a balance in gender equality. And this is a time that we want women to pursue a career in the field and become more involved in leadership positions and fill the gaps that we are finding ourselves in. And the first thing that we can do is become a mentor. If you're a pilot, you can become a mentor to young ladies. You can become a mentor to the other ladies in the industry to give them hope, a support structure, network. It is so vitally important, especially to have these mentorship programs developed into an airline's policies and environment. The next one, have career paths. You know, a lot of ladies are stagnated. They aren't allowed to advance. So allow them to have a career path and give assistive programs for women. Airlines are requested to widen the recruitment net to include more women in the selection process. And then we need to find ways to break the perceptions by focusing on women's skills and abilities and not just their gender. We need to look at have a welcoming and a flexible working environment, improving the policies, terms and conditions of the employment, and have a greater awareness and opportunities available for women. So I'm going to play this video, and I'm just going to, this is the IFALPA, and I'm just going to quickly share my sound. There we go. And this video is 1 minute 18. It's by the Female Pilot Working Group, and I will speak to you shortly. Enjoy. I don't know why I did that. Sorry about this, girls. Guys, I don't know why my computer is doing this. I apologize. That's a little video about our FALPA. And then we come to the burning concluding question, are we actually transforming? And yes, it might be a bit slow, but in Africa, absolutely. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry about technical glitches, and thank you for being here.
Wow. This is quite good. You actually answered a whole lot of questions that I had and wanted to clarify as you were going through. And I was like, okay, this is one of the questions I'm going to ask. Then you come up with a question. Maybe one question, as other people are still thinking about what they would want to ask you, would be, how did you personally deal with the challenges that you were experiencing as a female pilot? Maybe, for instance, maybe for instance, the issue of prejudice and the workplace environment. How did you deal with that?
Well, I must admit, in South African Airways, because we've come such a long history of introducing women into aviation, I've had an incredible journey and good experiences with my male colleagues. And so I just want to share that with you. In South African Airways, I personally have had amazing experiences. Where the prejudice came in a little bit when I was doing some training, or when you go overseas and you see what a difference it is overseas and how they treat you, and that is quite a big thing. So one example how we deal with it, at 43 Air School, we had one of our instructors was a female, and we felt more comfortable as women. So we had at one stage 4 to 5 female pilots going straight for the female instructor. And to save time in this one scenario, she wanted to teach us how to pre-flight a Seneca. It's a 2-engine aircraft. And she thought, we're all in the same phase. She's just going to do it one shot. So she invited all the girls, and we started going underneath the aircraft, and we started looking, and she's showing us, and we're on the ground. Now you can imagine the sight with all the boys and all the guys and all the men walking past the aircraft. And the comments are just like, how many girl pilots does it take to pre-flight a Seneca? And you just so you just try and you either laugh about it. I've heard some ladies keep quiet, and if it gets really bad, I've heard some ladies resign, and that's on the extreme case.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is the fact that the policies that are developed are not necessarily implemented to make sure that you are also protected. I don't think there is much focus on the aviation industry. You have actually accurately pointed to that. It's not only in South Africa. I think I was reading as we're preparing for this session, and I realized there's not much focus by the institutions that are actually given the responsibility to make sure that women are actually protected in a way. And you can imagine when people end up resigning something that they really love. I can imagine. The mentoring and coaching, is it something that, because you said a lot of experienced, matured people decide to, or pilots decide to retire early, is there a program which, because I take it you started, not I take it, you actually started very young, something that is very commendable. And I'm honored that to be speaking to a very first female pilot who has gone through all these stages. But the people who have been in the industry and decided to retire early, is there a program in place that is used to, coach and mentor, impartation of skills before they go, or even after? I think if it's something that you love, you can still do it even afterwards.
Well, that's actually what the whole Female Pilots Working Group is about, and trying to enforce, because there isn't mentorship programs out there. There's very few airlines that realize that this is important. And this is not just something that airlines need to look at. This is something that you need to look at right from the air school, right from the beginning. Even in I've had so many girls from high school phone me and they have no idea where to go, what to do, what's the questions to ask. Nobody is helping. There's no programs out there to do that. In South African Aviation, we thankfully had a mentorship program, but you need to improve it all the time. Things change, women's expectations change. Look what happened with COVID. So things change, you need to change with it. But the first thing is just to get the mentorship. Have women in the airline already try and put their hand up and say, I'll be a mentor, I'll try and help you. And there aren't a lot of us that are doing that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm hoping that out of this, we're probably going to partner with some of the organizations that I've identified, or even yourselves, to create a platform or sort of a database of some sort that will assist the people who would want to get into aviation to be taken through. This will be quite helpful. And I believe that we can grow it and engage more with different types of women and even males that are willing to assist in this regard, because it's not really much about women talking, but it's also about male acknowledging that, yes, there's been too much dominance and would like to have that sort of mix and equality of some sort. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions or comment, you are free to raise your hand. This was quite a very mouthful, Joanne, and let me call you Captain. I shouldn't really downgrade you. That's your name.
I'm still a co-pilot. Well, I left SA as a senior first officer. So I'll get back to captaincy soon.
Yeah, you're getting there. This was quite a mouthful, and one thing I noticed, and I even said to you yesterday, that you are very professional. Government talks about professionalization of the public service, for instance, but I've seen professionalism from engaging with you in terms of time, being accurate about what you would want. How is that, the professionalism within your profession? How is that sort of embedded? How do you get taught to uphold that on a daily basis?
From day one. From the day that you start flying, it's about hours. And when you log the logbook, they want the time. They want to know what time you're taking off, what time you're landing. So I think it gets ingrained to you. What time do you sign on? What time do you have to land? What time are we boarding? And you have to give exact numbers. So it's a unique personality to become a pilot because we're very, we love being formal and to the point and on time all the time, but that gets ingrained to you from day one, and that just builds on you, builds on you, and builds on you.
Wow, thank you. We've got a hand, TBG. If you've got a question, you can raise it.
Good afternoon, Taboho. I'm sorry, my identity comes out as TBG, but my full name is Taboho. Thank you very much for this eye-opening presentation. On a personal basis, I've been very fascinated by aeroplanes, the aviation, and how the investigations are made in the aviation industry, like from the near accident to the full accidents that are of aircraft. So it's a very, very fascinating industry. But I guess from where I grew up, I've never really gotten exposure. We are just getting exposure of this industry, and now with the technology improving and all that. So my question is, because I didn't get some of your first points as you started your presentation. Maybe you might have addressed it and I might have missed it, and sorry for that. What would you what are the requirements actually for a child who is in high school to study? Which subjects would you recommend that they study if they want to get into the aviation industry? I know it's a very broad industry from all the technicalities involved, but if they specifically want to become pilots, what are they required to study, and what personality traits do they need to have in them in order for them to survive in the being pilots? Yeah, I will leave it like that. Thank you very much.
That's perfect. Thank you, Tebogo. Those are very good questions, very valid. For your questions about which subjects to study, when I got into the sponsorship programs, the maths and science were crucial. Those were non-negotiable. You had to have those two. Geography, I don't know what it's called now, was a bonus. But you don't need, geography is not required. It just helps you because you get to know what the world looks like, what it's about. And I know I had to get higher grade, a C at least on higher grade, and a B on standard grade, if that makes any sense. The personality types, the best thing I can do to explain to you how you find that is to go on an introduction flight, because like my brother, he is perfect for it. He's got a photographic memory. He's very dogmatic. He's an incredible person. And when it's up for introduction flight, and that you can do at any air school, it takes 20 minutes. Some is 30 minutes. It's very, you go up with the instructor and he just lets you feel what it feels like to fly a plane. Do you actually like the feeling of lifting off and coming down? And, you know, when you take the throttle to land, do you actually want to do this? So the first step would be to youngsters, go for an introduction flight and see what it's like. Anyone can fly. The personality types that we're looking for is very a structured person. Like Temi said, we keep time. Someone that can it's good at problem solving, quick to think on their feet, very versatile, resilient type of personality, because you're going to have emergencies come at you and there's no checklist for it. And at some point you're going to need to be creative and think out the box. And that's the type of personality test we get to do in the selection process. They really grill you to try and figure out if you can actually manage the high pressure, very mentally stimulating environment.
Wow. That's quite informative. I had actually missed the part of asking about that. Thank you so much, Tebogo. Sunette has to go to ask a question. When is it too late to get into aviation, especially if you want to go all the way?
All the way, there are limits to getting into the airlines. Some don't have a cutoff age after the retirement age is 60. And some airlines have made it 63. And there's some airlines, like the lower cost airlines, there is no cutoff age. And you can basically, as long as you keep you keep your medical license valid, you can fly right up until you don't feel like you can anymore. As long as you pass your flight medical, you can fly a plane. How soon can you start? Well, you can start like me when I'm 14, but you can only physically get your license at the age of 17. So you can start anywhere between 14, but you can physically only get legally the license at the age of 17. If you want to go all the way, the general cutoff time to try and get your commercial pilot's license and everything is between 30 and 40. After 40, if you're only starting, then it does become a little bit tricky. Some airlines don't want to hire anyone past 40, and some make it even earlier. So it depends. It's from airline to airline.
Okay, we've got another hand. Tshepang, you can pose your question.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Thembi, for giving me the opportunity to speak. And thank you so much to Joanne for such a thought-provoking presentation. And also thank you for sharing a bit about your MBA on how inclusive the aviation field can be for everyone. I've got two questions. The first one is about how expensive it is to get into an aviation school. So I just wanted to check with you if there is a website where we can go and check for funding opportunities for people who are interested in following this kind of field. As you were speaking, I was thinking the next time I'm taking my nephews and nieces to the airport for them just to see a flight so that they can have an opportunity to dream and so that their ideas may be opened up. Thank you so much. My second question, it's on the transformation project. You spoke a lot about transformation and representation. And I'd like to check with you, how can we get more women, especially Black women, into this field of aviation, considering that the field is male dominated, as you rightly mentioned, and also it's dominated by white people. We don't see a lot of representation of Black people in this field. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tabang, and thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. Your first one about the website link. At this stage, with COVID, there aren't a lot of cadet pilot sponsorship programs, but they are going to start up. There are very few airlines in South Africa that have got them. So the best would be to look at Googling South African cadet pilot programs and who is actually got any recent ones. I know that Airlink has got one, Fly Sapphire has got one. How that works, you come in as a fully qualified PPL sometimes, or they take you right from the start right up to the end. So there are different ways to do it. Some guys go into the Air Force, as I mentioned in the presentation. Or you go for there's actually two other ways as well. You can go to air schools, and a lot of guys become like a 40 air school. They've got a cadet pilot program, and you go through all the transitions of becoming an ATC controller. You work with the students, and while you are working for them, you get a certain amount of hours per month, and you start building up that slowly. It's a very slow process, but it is a way. If you don't have finances, you get involved with these cadet pilot programs at institutions, at air schools, or you apply at, you brand yourself and you create a CV and your business model, and you go to a company and you go and look for sponsorship, and you say, listen, I want to represent. This is what I want to do, and you ask help to get sponsorship and bursary programs. So that's another way to get help, because I couldn't do it. I applied in the Sowetan newspaper to get my application for the SAA Cadet Pilot Program, and unfortunately they have subsequently stopped. But I'm hoping that they will start up again in the near future. Coming to your second question about transformation, I must admit, like in the presentation, in South Africa as a whole, we are actually third largest in the world, according to statistics, and that's 2021 statistics. We are about 10% representation of women, and it is a huge positive growth in the right direction. How we get more women involved at this stage, there isn't at this stage a lot of being done to educate. There are some programs online that you can do, but we are trying to, through education, through networking on LinkedIn, through social media, through media and the air schools, to try and just promote the fact that this is possible, especially in rural areas, to go out there. I know some of my colleagues, they go out and they do presentations in high schools and in communities to try and tell them this is possible, this is how you do it, and this is all the steps to do it. In South Africa, we've got a good representation. Even after the business rescue, the retrenchments, they kept 88 pilots, and out of that 88, they kept 18 females. So that's about 20.4, about just over 20% representation out of 88. So there is a transformation happening. It's just a very slow process.
Asia, your mic is on. Would you like to raise a question or pose a question or a comment? If you can hear me. Okay, maybe she's not hearing. But the question that Tepang posed about the transformation was one of the things I was going to ask you, not necessarily from the black representation point of view, because legally all women in South Africa are considered previously disadvantaged. So irrespective of the number of white females represented in the aviation industry, it's actually count towards the previously disadvantaged being represented. But yes, we would like to see a mix, which is something we would want to work towards and make sure that that gets addressed. You have actually answered a question on the retrenchment, and we spoke quite a little bit yesterday about it. Here you are, you have been working for 23 years, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's my first time to hear that there's retrenchment in aviation. Honestly, I was Googling and thinking I've never heard about it before. They always ask question, is it something to consider? But then COVID hit, and COVID said, we don't have enough money to be able to, we know SAA has got its own problems, but we still want to fly. Yesterday, after we spoke, I realized that SAA still have shortage of staff, irrespective of them having retrenched.
Yeah.
How did you deal with this retrenchment? I believe it's something that came, without you expecting. I'm glad that you were already far ahead in terms of wanting to have plan B. But what about those who did not have plan B and now this was their source of income? If,
Exactly.
like when you're talking as pilots, how was the experience and how are they dealing with it? I believe it's something that I don't know how I would deal with it, but I would like to hear from you and also your colleagues how you dealt with it and if there are ways to assist, not in terms of providing you work, but because I work for government too, and I work for an institution that give inputs into policies. So whatever that I source from my platform, I also give inputs into different types of stakeholders, which becomes very easy. So how did you deal with it as, not to you necessarily, but as a collective, mostly those who were retrenched?
I must admit, it was a 15-month process with the business rescue, and it was extremely difficult. We actually, with stress related, we lost a few colleagues, and it's very tough because this is what you want to do. A lot of us, like you said, didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a plan B, and I know everyone, a lot of the guys in the industry said you always have to have a plan B, and I didn't. I loved what I did. I was in my airline, my national carrier. I wanted to go until retirement. So it was unexpected, and during it, I must admit, with COVID, it actually, you were allowed to process what next. You're Googling, you're in front of your laptop and you realize this is real, this is happening. The guys really struggled figuring out what to do, when to do it, how we're going to do it, who's going to stay. What are you going to do when the retrenchment package option comes to you? Do you accept it or do you take a chance and stay with the airline? It's a very difficult situation. The terms and conditions changed considerably, and unfortunately for me, it changed to such a point where now I live in Cape Town, and it was a Joburg base. And I had two options. I have to either move all the way up to Johannesburg and give up everything that I've built my whole life in Cape Town to take up a job. And a lot of the terms and conditions were much poorer. So unfortunately, I had to sit with a decision. Do you sign, or do you trust God and you say, Lord, okay, I'm going to go out in faith, and I accepted the retrenchment package. And a lot of us had to do that and step out in faith and go, okay, what next? And thankfully, many of my colleagues have started businesses. Many of them are actually taking a break. It's been very stressful to process this emotional turmoil of up and down, up and down. What are we going back? Aren't we going back? What are we going to do? And where to next? Guys are starting to update their CVs. They're applying everywhere in the world. And thankfully, with the global shortage starting to happen, the industry is opening up again. And you will start seeing that in the media. Emirates are hiring, Qatar is hiring, Lufthansa is flying again. America is desperately wanting pilots. There are so many pilots that have left and that have retired early that there's now this huge gap, this huge void. So there will be a chance for us to get back into the air. It's just going to take a bit of time to get back.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I actually take my hat off for you guys, more especially having spoken to you and you were still positive and you said, no, it was okay. It was one of those, some had to stay and others had to leave. I mean, that takes somebody who has so much faith and also believe that something positive is gonna come through. And for that, I really applaud you, and I believe many can learn from you in terms of dealing with stressful situation in a working situation, in a workplace where they are faced with retrenchment. And yeah, I will pray for you too and believe that you're gonna be able to fly again. Is there anybody else who is a pilot who would like to make a comment? I see the comments that you've been making, uploading the presentation, but would like to hear your voices too, if you can. I wouldn't want to point at you because I've seen your comments. Suzanne, Aviation, obviously you are in aviation. If you would like to make a comment, we would appreciate.
There we go. I must quickly check in the chat box. Maybe I can answer some of the questions.
Yeah, the chat box was more about comments and questions. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Okay, it means you spoke on their behalf quite well. You represented the aviation industry quite well. And any closing remarks? I think you really covered every area that would have liked to speak about. Yeah, you did your homework quite well. And I think you are ready for the business world, whether it's no longer aviation, you are quite ready. The presentation is quite very professional, precise, straight to the point. And I think many will be able to understand the areas that you're struggling with. I will definitely keep in touch so that we can find something that we can be able to do together. But any closing remarks?
I just want to thank you again for this opportunity that the women are out there and even the guys out there can hear what we are going through in aviation, but that there is hope. It's not all doom and gloom. It's an amazing career. You must understand when the aviation bug, which we refer to, when it bites big and it never leaves you. Yeah. So every time you see an aircraft, you look up. When you see a road that narrows down the path, you think it's a runway. I made comments the other day to someone that came to and I showed him my garage. I said, look, no, there were the bricks, there where the runway is. And he just laughed at me. So it's in your blood. You keep on speaking to your family and you're like, if they ask you something, you're like, no, stand by. And it's a fun career. Don't give up. There are people there that are there to help. And there are options. There are ways to get airborne. If you don't want to be a pilot, there's other options. And if you ever want to get in touch with me, Tembi, you're welcome to share my email address. And then the ladies can phone me, the guys can ask me, because I know there's a lot of people that have got specific questions. And this is what we are here for. We are here to represent and to help and to educate and to mentor. And just flying is amazing. It's an awesome industry. And I love to see I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future.
Would you consider opening a school?
I think I would need quite a few finances. I'll definitely assist in opening a school. Maybe one day, we'll see.
I think you can do quite well. Your voice is comforting even to students that may not be able to understand. They will be able to. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Joanne Jordan talking to us about her journey in the aviation industry as a female pilot. We cannot thank you enough, Joanne, for having given us this opportunity. And we really appreciate it. This was quite eye-opening. I had goosebumps all the way as you were talking, because I always sit at the back and you guys will be, taking the plane through. But having an opportunity to talk to a person who experienced this on a daily basis was actually assisting to understand the challenges and the things that you go through. So I believe people who are going to also watch this will be able to learn from it and consider taking their kids to the aviation industry. So thank you so very much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, people who have joined us from America and also, what did you call it? Arctic Circle. Yeah.
Yes, in Canada.
In Canada. Thank you so very much. You actually made us global too. So we really appreciate. Thank you so much. And to your family, thank you so much for having come to support you. I heard you talking to them, so we really appreciate. You must have a blessed year, 2022, and even the remaining months. I pray that God will open doors for you and make sure that everything goes according to plan. And congratulations on your MBA in advance. We are so proud of you too. So thank you.
I'm so relieved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.